My name is Eleanor Hayes. I'm 68 years old, and I never imagined that the children I raised alone after their father died, the same children I worked 2 jobs for, sacrificed sleep for, and protected with every ounce of strength I had, would one day try to sell my house behind my back while I was away visiting my sister for a simple 4-day trip. But that's exactly what happened. And the only reason they failed was because I returned early with a plan that exposed every greedy intention they tried to hide. It started subtly, small signs that felt off, but not enough to accuse anyone. My son asking what day I'd be leaving, my daughter offering to help manage my mail, the 2 of them insisting they'd take care of the house while I was gone even though they hadn't visited in months. I thought they were just trying to reconnect. I wanted to believe they were becoming thoughtful adults. I didn't know those smiles were rehearsed, their sudden interest a setup. The night before my trip, I overheard a strange conversation, my son whispering in the kitchen, saying, "She leaves tomorrow." "Yeah, we'll get it done fast." I walked in and he pretended he was ordering pizza. My daughter's eyes kept darting to her phone like she was hiding something. My instincts buzzed, but after years of giving them the benefit of the doubt, I pushed the discomfort away. I shouldn't have, because the moment my train pulled out of the station, they got to work. On the second day of my visit, my neighbor, an older man named Harold, who sees everything from his porch, called me and said, "Eleanor, I don't mean to alarm you, but there are strangers walking around your yard with clipboards. One of them asked me how long you planned on staying in the house." My heart dropped. I called my kids. Neither answered. Hours passed. More silence. A pit formed in my stomach, a deep, sick feeling telling me something was horribly wrong. So I lied to my sister, told her I wasn't feeling well, and booked the earliest ticket home for the next morning. By the time I returned quietly without telling anyone, I found 3 cars parked in my driveway, a man in a suit taking measurements of my living room, and my daughter standing there smiling nervously as if she owned the place. She froze the moment she saw me. My son stepped out of the kitchen holding printed papers, his face draining of color like he had seen a ghost. And scattered across my dining table were documents, a listing agreement, a pre-inspection report, photos they had taken without my knowledge, and worst of all, a draft of an email addressed to a realtor with the subject line, "Urgent seller ready to move quickly." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply said, "What is going on?" And the silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. My daughter finally muttered something about trying to help me downsize and making things easier for me as I get older. But the documents on the table didn't say help. They said rush sale, immediate availability, and owner currently. Away children handling everything. My son tried to add that they thought it would be best if I didn't have the stress of making the decision myself. He didn't realize he'd just confessed their plan outright to make the decision for me, to push me out while I wasn't home, to grab control while I wasn't looking. My hands shook not from fear, but from the fury building inside me. Because that house wasn't just property. It was the home I bought after my husband died, the place where I raised them, the place filled with memories they apparently had no loyalty to. But instead of exploding, I took a breath and remembered something important. Reacting emotionally would only help them. What I needed was evidence, proof, a strategy. And fortunately, I had already created one. The second Harold called me .c. The night before returning, I used my sister's computer and logged into my home security system, one my children didn't even know existed because I installed it the year before after break-ins in our neighborhood. I added temporary cloud storage and activated interior recording modes in the living room, kitchen, and hallway. And from the moment I walked out with my suitcase days earlier, those cameras captured everything, my kids bringing strangers inside, showing them bedrooms, discussing selling price ranges, and even joking about finally getting something out of this house. My son was recorded saying, "She won't fight it, she'd just be shocked for a bit and then accept it." My daughter laughed and said, "Mom always gives in eventually." The cruelty of it hit me harder than a punch. They weren't helping me, they were counting on my obedience. They were banking on my silence. And they were planning to profit from my home before I even returned. So when I walked in and found them scrambling like cornered mice, I calmly told the realtor, who had been standing in awkward silence, "Sir, please step outside. This is my home, and I did not authorize any sale." The man looked horrified. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I was told you were aware of everything." I pulled out my phone and showed him the footage. His face turned red with embarrassment. "I apologize," he whispered before leaving immediately. My kids stood there shaking. My daughter rushed toward me with tears in her eyes, reaching for my hand, but I stepped back. My son stammered something about miscommunication and doing what's best, and hoping to use the money to help pay off some debts, and suddenly everything made sense. They weren't helping me, they were helping themselves, debt, bills, personal financial mistakes, and I was their solution. But my plan wasn't finished yet. I told them we were going for a drive to my lawyer's office. Their expressions collapsed. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I simply said, "If you're so confident you were doing this for my benefit, then you can explain everything to my attorney." The drive was silent. My son clenched his jaw. My daughter kept wiping her eyes. But I didn't feel sorry for them, not after seeing how easily they tried to erase me from my own home. At the office, my lawyer, a sharp, calm woman named Miss Carter, listened to everything, then pressed a button and played the clips from my house on a screen. As the recordings played, my kids looked smaller and smaller in their chairs. My daughter whispered, "Please turn it off." My son covered his face. When the final clip ended, my daughter telling a stranger, "We're hoping to get her into a retirement place within the month," Miss Carter leaned back and said, "Eleanor, you have more than enough to file charges." My children gasped. My daughter collapsed into a sob. My son whispered, "Mom, please, no, don't do this." But it was Ms. Carter who delivered the real blow. She explained that what they did constituted attempted real estate fraud, elder financial exploitation, and property interference. The color drained from their faces. My son began pleading, promising it would never happen again, blaming stress, blaming bad advice, blaming everything except the truth. They chose greed over family. My daughter kept saying she was sorry, that they panicked, that they thought selling the house would help everyone. I looked at them, these adults I had once carried in my arms, and felt a mixture of heartbreak and cold clarity. I told Miss Carter, I didn't want them in jail. I didn't want a public fight, but I did want protection and consequences. So I instructed her to draft a no trespass order, legally preventing them from entering my property without permission. I had her create a written agreement stating they had no authority over any of my assets. And I added one final requirement: mandatory family counseling if they ever wanted a relationship with me again. My son protested, but Miss Carter reminded him the alternative involved police and courtrooms. He signed. My daughter signed through tears. I signed last. And just like that, the house they tried to steal became the boundary they could no longer cross. When we left the office, they tried to hug me, but I stepped back again. "Trust is not something I owe you," I said quietly. "It's something you lost." And as I drove home alone, the sun setting behind the trees, I felt a painful but powerful truth sink in. Sometimes the people you love will mistake your kindness for weakness until you show them exactly how strong you are. My kids tried to sell my house while I was away, but I returned early with a plan that protected everything I built. And for the first time in years, my home finally felt like mine again.